Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Saturday Morning Gaming Show. It is December 19th, 2020. I am your co-host, the Fat Wizard, joined today by...
Alamaxia.
And Lobos.
And today, gents, can you believe it? We're going back to 1986, checking out The Legend of Zelda on the NES. And, boy, I've never beat this game. I got real close. And it was a real treat to go back here. Real quick before we get started, because I want to just walk you through something I thought was interesting. We're actually watching it's like the little attract screen here where they go through all the items. And I thought it was kind of cool that they start off being like, hey, here's all the items of the game. And after I beat the game, I edited the footage and I rendered the video out. And I watched the intro and I was like, okay, magical rod, key, map, magical key. What the heck is the magical key? That sounds like something I should have gotten. So we'll touch on that a little bit here. But Alamaxia, you were definitely the resident expert of this. So I'm going to let you start out. Again, Lobos and I've played it, but I never beat it. Lobos, this was your first time. And then Alamaxia is the expert. So I think we got a cool range of experiences here, but Alamaxia, why don't you start us out? Just talk us about this game in general.
Oh my, really where to start. So The Legend of Zelda, first in the many iterations of Zelda, and one of the, actually, this Zelda is close to the ending of one of the 3 timelines of Zelda.
Oh no. We're getting into the timeline stuff.
We're not doing timeline. We're not going that deep. But I will give you the overall idea of what The Legend of Zelda is. So in The Legend of Zelda, there exists this this item called the Triforce. Or really, it's a 3 pieces of triangles. Each triangle is a Triforce. You have the Triforce of Wisdom, the Triforce of Power, and the Triforce of Courage. And it is said that whenever all 3 pieces come together, then whoever touches the fully formed Triforce has their most desired wish come true. And in The Legend of Zelda 1 here, the Triforce of Wisdom, which is Zelda's Triforce, has been broken into 8 different shards and placed into the 8 dungeons. Ganon has the Triforce of Power, and Link, born with the Triforce of Courage, was sought out by Impa to effectively save Hyrule. So he has to go collect all pieces of the Triforce of Wisdom, face down Ganon, where all 3 pieces of the Triforce are in the same room, and battle it out for the future.
Yeah, and it's a good thing that there's an old man willing to give poor Link a sword, because he kind of just he starts out the adventure. He's maybe a little maybe ill prepared for this journey, right? And I think this is as classic of a, when you think about openings in games, right? You think about the Zork intro, which is you stand outside of a house with a white mailbox or something like that, right? And you think about this one, where it's just, hey, there's a room to go into. And you go in there and the old man says, it's dangerous to go alone, take this. Such a classic line. Even if you haven't played Zelda, I think you know that. And you pick up your sword and you go off on an adventure. And I think Lobos is someone who is coming into it, 25 years in the future. How do you feel like this moment held up? Just the idea of going in, picking up a sword and being like, all right, have fun.
Yeah, to be honest, I was way on board with it. I like when they just throw you into it and they're like, all right, go, do your thing. You're supposed to do it. And I wasn't really curious about the old man necessarily. I just said, where's my sword? Oh, there's my sword. Nice. Let's go.
Going on adventure.
Of course, he gives us a wooden training sword, so not the best, but
it's
gets
strong
you started.
Enough to kill skeletons, right?
You have to master using it.
And it's a well-known, piece of history that Shigeru Miyamoto, who I think I don't know his exact role in this. I think he's one of the designers or the designer, said that this game really was influenced by his childhood experiences of just exploring, right? Going into little caves and just, finding things that are interesting. And that's, in many ways, it is very reminiscent of that. You just here's a doorway. What's there? Oh, cool. This is Dungeon 9. How did I get here? I haven't even found Dungeon 2 yet.
Yep.
But I like it. It's in some way, it's an open world game where you can go into dungeons in any order you want. You can't complete them in any order because some of them do have hard gates. You have to get items from other ones. But yeah, I actually found dungeons like 8, 9, and 6 before I found Dungeon 2. I think, Lobos, you kind of had the same thing, right?
6, 7, and 9 I think I found before 2.
Yeah.
It's kind of surprising to me that you found 8 before 2 because 2 is so close to 8. So close.
Yeah, it is very close. But it's well. Let's talk a little bit about the overworld in the game because there's sort of two types of areas. You've got the dungeons, which has its own self-contained map. We're in a dungeon right now, Dungeon 1. And then there's the overworld. And the overworld is quite big, and you never find a map, right? So you're always lost. Although it does show you a general, like you have a mini map, and it does show you generally where you are, but there's no way to actually view where you are. Unlike in the dungeons, you can find a map, and we actually just picked up a map, and now you can see specifically where you are in relation to the dungeon, which is pretty cool. And I don't know if you noticed, but each of the dungeons has is actually an image. Lobos, did you see
like
that?
a shape. Yeah.
Yeah, and this one, we're in Dungeon 1, and this one is called the Eagle. And I think this is officially named. Alamaxia, do you know if these are official, like in the manual or something like this?
Yeah, these are official names that are out there. So the Eagle is official for this one.
Yeah. And so this one is pretty easy. It's fun. Again, when I first started this game, I died 2 or 3 times getting up to the Eagle dungeon here. As you just kind of remember, it's like, yeah, this is definitely one of those early Nintendo games where things feel a little stiff. And I think coming from 30 years in the future, you're used to a little bit more leeway, right? But no, you have to learn how to play this game. And inside this dungeon, you actually uncover a couple items. You think about modern Zelda games is you go into a dungeon, you pick up one item, and that item is used to kill the boss, more or less, right? Dungeon 1, though, actually gives you 2 items. It gives you a boomerang and a bow. It doesn't give you any arrows. It gives you a bow, right? But you don't actually need either of those to finish the dungeon, right, Alamaxia? Is that correct?
Nope. All you have to do is just have your trusty sword and go up and poke the boss a few times. He doesn't have too much health.
Yeah, and the boss, why don't you walk us quickly through the boss and how that boss works?
So the first boss, Dungeon 1, is Aquamentus, and it's a dragon that just kind of patrols back and forth on the right side of the room, doesn't really move around a whole lot. He himself is not a threat, but he will shoot out 3 fireballs in kind of a cone at you, and the middle fireball will track where you are, or where you are whenever it fires off, and the other one just kind of cone off to the top and bottom. And you just have to dodge those, run up, and poke them in the head with your sword. Not too difficult.
So not too bad. Yeah, and especially if you have full hearts, because when you have full hearts, your sword... I guess the idea is you have the master sword, or what are we calling this? The ability to actually shoot like a projectile from your sword. Is that
so? I like to think of that as kind of being an ability that the Triforce gives Link, because
that
makes
because
sense.
he has a sword, and whenever he's fully powered, fully lifed up, he can shoot out this extra beam, and that extra beam that he shoots out whenever he's at full health is something that goes throughout many of the future Zeldas. It eventually goes into a magic-based system.
Okay. And what's nice about that is, and I use that for killing the first boss here, is you can kind of stand far away from your enemy and just plink them with the sword. And then if you get hit, then you have to close the distance and actually hit them. You have to be in melee range, so you're kind of putting yourself at danger a little bit here. But after you kill that boss, he drops a heart container, which you may choose to pick up or not. I think that's really cool. And, there's all sorts of speedrunning categories like low percent or whatever that actually, says you're not allowed to pick those up. So some people don't. And you can stay at 3 hearts the entire game. But yeah, you pick up that heart container, and now you're at 4 hearts. assuming that it was your first dungeon you completed. And then you go in and you pick up the first piece of Triforce and you hold it over your head triumphantly, and then you actually walk out of the dungeon and you move on to the next one. And again, they don't really give you direction. And I spent a lot of time just trying to scout around the forest and figure out what to do. I think by the time I completed the first dungeon, I had enough money. It cost 60 rupees, rupees being the currency in this game. Mm-hmm. For 60 rupees, you can get yourself a blue candle. And Lobos, I think you had some fun with that candle trying to figure out how that worked, right?
No, I did that pretty early, and then so if you've heard of the game The Binding of Isaac, it's very heavily inspired by Zelda. Even the room structure, how you're kind of dungeon crawling, a lot of the items that you pick up as well. And so I was familiar enough with that, and it works a little differently from the original Zelda, but basically the candle will shoot out a flame that kind of very quickly grinds to a halt, and then if it lands in an eligible burnable location, then it'll burn away a bush.
Generally bush.
Yeah, generally bush. It'll burn away, and then you can reveal a secret. Usually
sometimes
a staircase.
Those secrets are useful.
Mm-hmm.
You walk into one, and there's a guy. I think usually they're either little orc guys. I guess moblins, I think is what they are,
mm-hmm.
or they're old men. And sometimes they'll say it's a secret to everyone. I think that's one of the lines, and you'll get some amount of everybody. And and I think there's one that even says pay me for burning down my front door.
Yes, there's a good number of caves and burnable bushes in the game that they're hidden. You wouldn't normally just be able to walk into them, but if you burn down if you burn down the tree or you blow open their cave door, then you walk in. They say, "Hey, pay me for that door you just broke," and you have to give them 20 rupees.
Wow, I didn't find any that I had to pay. All of them just gave me stuff. So yeah, I got lucky.
So after that, we move on to the Dungeon 2, which is called the Moon, and we actually find ourselves in upgraded boomerang, which is really cool. So we find in Dungeon 1, there are these orange moblins, and they use this orange boomerang, and then Dungeon 2, you find these blue moblins, and generally blue things are stronger than orange things. That's just kind of the pattern they use. And once you kill all the blue moblins in this room, they drop a blue boomerang, and this blue boomerang will travel through the entire length of the screen, whereas the orange one only travels maybe halfway across the screen. So it's an upgrade to some degree. It takes longer to get back if you miss stuff. But yeah, I think that's also a really cool thing where it's all right, here you go, you get a boomerang. And boom, here's a boomerang upgrade.
Did you guys pay attention to the color of boomerangs the gorillas use? Those moblins inside of dungeons. Did you notice that when you had the wooden boomerang, they were orange. Once you got the blue boomerang, they all turned blue.
Mm. Oh, is that just the sprite that's loaded or whatever?
Yep.
Yeah, fair enough.
Nice, smart. And we just killed the end boss here. We found a secret room in level 2, and the old man says I think it's Dodongo. Is that his name?
Yep.
Dodongo hates smoke.
Dodongo
dislikes smoke. Yeah,
dislikes smoke. And I think, do we also get bombs in this dungeon?
Mm-hmm. The room before you fight Dodongo, after you kill all the gorillas, they dropped one.
Nice.
Yeah, and so you'd be all right, well, you can do 2 things, I believe. Alamaxia, can you walk us through how bombs affect Dodongo here?
So, a couple different ways you can hurt Dodongo. One of them is using the clue that he dislikes smoke. So you have a bomb blow up right in front of him, and that kind of causes him to pause, and you can damage him a little bit with your sword. Otherwise, the more traditional way that people like to defeat Dodongo is just drop a bomb in his mouth twice. So as he's kind of patrolling around the room, he himself, again, he's not much of a threat. He doesn't have any projectiles. He just walks around. So get in front of him and boop, drop a bomb, make him eat it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The one thing I noticed was that if you kill him by him consuming bombs, he doesn't drop anything. But if you use the smoke method, then he drops bombs. So I kept trying to kill him by dropping the bombs, and they're not super predictable because you'll put it in front of him and then they immediately turn away, and then you don't get the smoke in his face. And also kind of positioning that explosion to hit them just right. It was a little tricky. So I'd often waste more bombs to get the loot, the bomb loot, but it was, I tried.
Yeah. I actually want to follow up with that. And I do feel like that was a downward spiral. In some ways, to me, it reminded me of gambling. And here's what I mean, right? So often what would happen is I'd like get hit by an enemy and I'm down half a heart. I'm like, okay, so I just need to go kill another enemy and then get a heart, and then I'll be at full heart. And so I'm like, all right, well, let me go kill an enemy. And I'm like, okay, well, I got hit by another enemy, so now I need 2 hearts. All right, let me and I end up like going down to half a heart. I'm like, man, this was just a terrible idea. And I don't know if you guys found out, like, also experienced that, but that seemed like more often than not, hunting for hearts ended up getting me killed.
Hunting for hearts can definitely be a problem. There is one trick I can offer that there are actually mobs have drop loot tables. Mm-hmm. And there's, I think, 4 different groups of mobs that share loot tables. So you can basically predict what the next drop is going to be based on what your previous ones are.
That's right.
Yeah, so I did find... okay, so let's talk a little bit about some of the secret messages in this game, just because a lot of them are... I'm not sure if translated poorly or just they could mean many different things. So one of the last... in I think it was Dungeon 8 or 9, you meet a character... And he says, 10th enemy holds the bomb. And you're like, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
And so, but that is a big clue, and speedrunners use that, but I don't think even if you could imagine what that means, I don't see how you could use that. So, Lobos, did you figure out what that meant?
Well, I think people mentioned to me that every so many enemies that you kill is a guaranteed bomb drop, which is what that's saying, right?
Under specific conditions,
right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't know about the conditions.
Yeah, Alamaxia, why don't you walk us through those conditions?
The conditions are you must kill 10 enemies without getting hit, and then kill the 10th enemy with a bomb.
Oh.
Yeah. So
it is so specific.
Yeah. And it's like... That's not exactly... I mean, okay, old man, you were about half right on that one. So I want to talk about some of the other ones because I wanted to look up like what this meant, and I saw on the internet they're like it could be one of many things. So one of them was Eastmost Peninsula holds the secret,
right?
Yes. And I heard variances of everything between it's telling you where the first dungeon is to there's a heart container on the right side. So it's like. It seems like there's not a consensus or not one that I could deduce from this. Another one was talking about like a dead end. It was something about like
a tree.
It's a tree, like dead end tree. And some people said, that's telling you where dungeon number 8 is. Some other people are saying that's where you can go gambling. So I think that's it's kind of interesting. I don't know, Alamaxi, do you have a preference on how you interpreted these?
I really like to interpret the Eastmost Peninsula as the key and the tree one as as kind of both the same area, that very upper right corner of the map where you find that gambling hall within the tree, and then there's a secret room just north of the tree where you can actually walk on top of the cliff, and it takes you up to one of those moblins that gives you 100 rupees. Yeah. And I think that's kind of, I really think that's the one that they're kind of alluding to, because those 100 rupee moblins are really almost necessary in this game because there's a handful of items that you must purchase from shops.
Yeah, and we actually did pick up one. I didn't know that it was necessary, and it's sort of a secret shop, I'd say. It's a piece of food.
Right.
And it looks like... It looks like
Castlevania wall meat or something.
Yeah. And I picked that up, and I'm like, okay. I initially thought it was a healing thing.
Right.
And so I was like, all right. But then I looked in the manual, and I think in the manual it says it attracts enemies. And so I couldn't find what enemies it attracts. I didn't find it a very useful item. But luckily, I did purchase it because we'll need it later on. Lobos, did you pick it up right away as well?
Nope. But when as soon as I was kind of given an in-game clue that I needed it, I knew what I needed. I was ready because I didn't buy it because I was like, okay, this restores health, so that's what I'll buy to restore health. I don't know what the meat's for. And then, it was pretty obvious right away. Luckily, I didn't buy it and like use it and waste a bunch of money or anything, but yeah.
Yeah. We'll get to that because I kind of interpreted that clue a little bit better. We just finished Dungeon 3. This level is called the Manji, I think is the official name. I also heard it described as like or magic or something like this. I will say I don't want to talk too much about it, but it does have if you look at the map image, it may be when it passed in today's.
It is the Buddhist version of the swastika. It goes the other way. It is a swastika. It goes the other way, but it is the Buddhist version.
Right.
Okay. Still think maybe Nintendo probably wouldn't allow that, but
that would fly today. Still,
it wouldn't fly today. So after that, I got the clue from Dungeon 3. I think there's a guy that says, "Have you talked to the man in the waterfall?" Is that right? Something like that. And I think that basically gives you a clue to the next dungeon.
It's either 3 to 4 or 4 to 5. I think it was 3 to 4.
4 to 5 was the waterfall clue.
Oh, okay.
Oh no, I think he said something about like meeting a man on the top. Yeah, or something like that. It basically said, "Hey, go get the next sword, dummy." And so Alamaxia, I got the white sword. I don't know what it's called. What's that called?
I think it is just called the white sword.
Cool.
Yeah, it's
nailed it first try.
Very basic.
What's the requirements for this one?
Master using it, and you can have this.
Yeah, what does that actually mean?
What that means is you have to master using the sword by proving your worth to him by collecting 2 heart containers. So you have to have a total of 5 heart containers.
Okay.
In order to pick that sword up.
Easy.
Okay, so it's you can get it pretty early on in the game. I'm assuming you have to beat at least a dungeon.
Nope.
Or at least 2 dungeons.
Nope. There are heart containers that you can get overworld with only bombs, and you can get bombs without going into a dungeon. In fact, there's a very powerful item you can get before even going into your first dungeon that will let you take only half damage. But I know we're going to get to that one later on. That one
I got that very early. Yeah.
You're talking about the blue ring, right?
The blue ring.
Yes.
Yeah, you have to farm some money there.
Yep.
Which I eventually do. Now, so we are in Dungeon 4, and I saw this enemy called Likes, which basically looks like a stack of pancakes. And this is one of these things where I misremembered. So, like, having played this game and then forgetting about it for 20 years worked to my deficit. Because I remembered that these things would eat your shield.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember also that the shop sells your shield. I didn't realize the shop actually sold like an upgraded version. So I was under the assumption that if these guys ate you, they would eat your normal shield and thus you'd be shieldless. But that's not the case. They only eat your magical shield. Mm-hmm. So I was playing a little too cautious about that. Kind of like, having the old like, I think this is how that works, but I don't want to actually test it out. Now, Lobos, did you ever buy the magical shield?
I did. So I had the same exact thought with how the likes functioned. I think there is a game where they eat your shield, even your most basic, and then you run around without a shield. But I don't remember that. It might have been Link's Awakening, actually. But anyways, so I spent most of the game not having bought the shield because I would save my rupees up for other things, and I didn't really care too much. But I eventually bought it, and then about 2 minutes later, it got eaten, and I was like, okay, all right.
And it's expensive. I think the cheapest one you can get is 80 rupees, right?
Something like that. I didn't buy another one.
It's worth having though because it can deflect the fireballs that are shooting at you from all angles.
We'll get there. We don't want to spoil going forward, but we'll get there. And rupees are somewhat hard to come by. Most enemies, if they drop rupees, they'll drop a single rupee. Occasionally, they'll drop another rupee, which is 5 rupees. But if you want to farm 80 rupees to buy your shield, you're probably looking, unless you use optimal strats, you're probably looking at a good 15, 20 minutes of farming, just kind of moving around from area to area.
Yeah.
So we're on Dungeon 4 now. This one's called the Snake, and it brings back one of the bosses that we had already fought. I don't know what it's called, but it's kind of like a hungry hippo thing.
Manhandla?
Yes.
Nice.
Nice. Perfect. And Alamaxia, wouldn't you walk us through how this thing works?
Manhandla. So he's just he looks like just a little node with a bunch of crab pincers on north, south, east, west sides of him. So he just goes around the room and shoots fireballs at you like crazy. And what you have to do is be able to destroy all the claws on him. And you can do so by poking away at him with a sword, or my personal favorite, if you can time a bomb just right and get the bomb to explode on his center mass, it'll kill all the pincers in one blow.
Nice.
You can see I'm trying to do that right now and not having great results.
Oh, there you go. You got 3 though.
I got him. Yeah, it took about 5 hearts there. I will say that it's really fascinating watching speedrunners. This is where they say walk into the waterfall up near the end of level 4. It's great watching speedrunners play this game because they know the movement patterns here, and they are able to time, for the most part, those bomb drops very well. I think one of the difficulties for the movement and the AI movement here is it just seems so random. And Alamaxia, is there actually patterns, or is it basically like each grid? So each grid is about the size of Zelda, right? And it almost looks like every time they hit a new grid that they decide, I'm going to either go straight or change directions.
I think it kind of depends on the mob. Some of them are a lot more erratic in their direction changing, and some of them are absolutely random in the direction they go, and some of them will more probable turn toward Link.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like in Dungeon 3, we had to fight the orange Dark Nuts, and Dark Nuts are notorious for chasing Link down and not letting him get any damage on them.
Yeah. We're going to definitely talk about those later.
Can we talk about those electric enemies, those electric balls?
I think they're called bubbles, right?
Bubbles, yeah, yes. Bubbles. Those are awful in this game, except that it took me to like Dungeon 6 or 7 to realize that they actually don't deal damage to you.
Yeah,
but
they don't deal damage.
It's almost worse. They don't. But it's almost worse because they disable you using your weapon for like 2 seconds. So if you're trying to fight other things, and they also chase you very aggressively if they're nearby, they'll come right at you. So
I will say, and it's probably not worth trying to do this, but because they don't do damage to you, but they still trigger your invulnerability.
Right.
So every time you get hit, you are invulnerable for a couple seconds. And even though you can't attack, you could still use things like bombs or use your candle or bow and arrow. So you could technically get hit, be invulnerable, and just kind of face tank other enemies and try to burn them down with your bombs or whatever.
That is a speedrun strat.
Okay. Nice. There you go. That's really cool.
And I considered that, boosting. But damage boosting. Yeah. Just the fact that you can't use your sword, though. I don't know if there's a way that they managed to use the sword, but that was kind of annoying. So I got really frustrated with those guys.
We completed Dungeon 4, which is with a snake. Did we pick up an item here, Alamaxia?
Back in Dungeon 4, we picked up the ladder.
Oh, yeah, we got the step ladder.
The ladder.
Yeah. Yeah, and so that allows you to, I was talking about earlier when I was speaking about what Eastmost Peninsula holds a secret may be, there is a heart container just sitting out there, and they look like there's 2 little like rafts. And so you use that ladder to like bridge the gaps between the rafts. And that's actually a hard gate for, I think all dungeons 5 and above do require the use of that step ladder to actually step over some lava or water or something that is separating one side of the room from the other. So I think that is a necessary item to complete dungeons. Is that correct, Alamaxia, or are there other ways to do so?
I think 5 and 7 are the only ones. 5, 7, and 9 are the only ones after that you have to cross water. 6 and 8 I don't think have it, but otherwise, there's no other way around that. No other way without using some major glitches that you wouldn't want to try.
Now, I was just in the graveyard because again, as a child, I was like, I'm pretty sure there was something. Actually, there's a riddle somewhere that says, "Meet the old man in the graveyard." I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. I think there's a master sword up there. And so, if you touch the graves, most graves, when you touch them, will spawn a ghost. And I found one in the upper left corner that did not. And I was like, okay, I think this is the one that the master sword is under, but I can't move it. I'm like, okay. What? Oh yeah, isn't there like a power bracelet? I'm like, yeah, I think that there's a power bracelet which will allow me to move heavier items. So I'm thinking, all right, well, I have to go to one of the dungeons and I get the power bracelet, and that's what allows me to get that Master Sword. And I think I even commented on that in the Discord, and Alamaxia's like, I can't wait to chat about you on this. But I did watch Lobos' stream, and Lobos was on a completely different section. It's the rightmost section, and he managed to just push it open. I was like, oh, crap. I made some assumptions here that weren't right. Why don't you walk us through, we don't have the Master Sword yet, but we'll get it soon enough. Alamaxia, why don't you walk us through the requirements to get the Master Sword?
Much like the White Sword, the requirements to get the magical sword are all purely heart-based. For this one, I believe it's 13 hearts? I think it's 13 hearts is what you need.
Yeah.
And the earliest you can get it is prior to going into Dungeon 5.
Well,
okay. Yeah. And we are in Dungeon 5 right now, and we just got a little secret message that said, Dig Dogger hates a certain sound, right?
Yes.
And I remember there was a specific item. Lobos, did you... I want to get a sense from someone that hadn't played this game. What did you think when you saw it? Did you see that clue, first of all?
I did see the clue, absolutely, before I reached the boss or anything, and...
what did you think that meant?
I didn't know right away, but after a little bit of experimentation, I did realize and remember on my own thinking about the items that displayed on the beginning of the game, the attraction. Yeah. Then I was like, wait a minute, there's a thing. Yeah. So then I was like, I need to go find a thing. I think I actually left the dungeon to go and try and find it, but I think it ends up being in the dungeon.
Yeah, it is. And what's really interesting is this is the only boss room you go into, and the door remains open.
Yep.
And so, and actually, you can't kill it when you first see it. And I think that's a clue where it's like, hey, you don't have the item you need yet to be able to complete this. Now, I will say I had a heck of a time actually completing Dungeon 5, because one of the things, I think we're going to get to in a bit, one of the things that you have to do is you meet the blue dark nuts.
Ooh, yeah.
And the dark nut is a very difficult enemy. It's heavily armored, and you cannot hit it from the front. You can only hit it from the sides, and you can hit it with bombs. I don't think you can't use fire. You can't use your arrows. Is there any other mechanism for killing them, Alamaxia?
Sword and bombs. That's what you got.
Yeah, and that's all you get. And again, I only have 8 bombs here, and I walked into a room that has 5 of these blue dark nuts, and they probably take between like 2 and 3 bombs each if you were to do them one at a time. So again, speedrun tactics, you want to try to group them together and drop them there. But this room this I could see is easily a speedrun killer. Because what you have to do is let's talk quickly about secrets, because this is a dead end room. But you do see stairs down. You can't figure out how to get there. And what you need to do is kill all the enemies here. And once you kill all the enemies, you can move the brick out of the way. And that will allow you to access this secret. But it's quite painful. So I ended up leaving the dungeon number 5. I saved up enough money. I got myself a blue ring. Lobos, when did you pick up that blue ring?
I picked up the blue ring pretty early because, like I said, I ran into the second dungeon pretty late, so I had already pretty heavily explored the not where the dungeons are apparently, but I explored around, and I went to Northwest very early. There's a puzzle there that you get a clue for, or you actually there's a witch, I think, that has like basically a cost of rupees. What is it, 10, 30, 50, I think. And if you give her some rupees, she'll comment. And the amount that you're supposed to give her is 30. If you do 10, she says, that's not enough. And if you do 50, she says, boy, you're rich, which is
I love that,
immediately what I did, of course. I was like, well, I'm going to get rid of the most expensive one because I have just that much. And
that's the one you're like, oh, the best information is the most expensive always, right?
Right, yeah. That's where they get you. But anyways, she gives you basically a pass an order of directions for this maze where it looks like you're just kind of hitting the same screen over and over. But if you go in the right directions, it allows you to go by. That's where you get to the graveyard and the later stuff. That one I actually brute forced pretty quickly because it was just alternating every direction basically, up, left, down, left, I think, or something like that.
Mm-hmm. It's not too hard.
Yeah. There's another one that I did not manage to brute force, but I was close. But anyways, that was a long way of getting over to what I was saying, which now I don't even remember what I was saying.
You were talking about you were filthy rich and you got the blue ring very early.
Yes. So beyond that area, you find the blue ring in a shop. It's 250 rupees, and I was like, I'm getting that. So I saved all my rupees from then on. Yeah. I mean, it's super expensive.
Awesome. It turns your little tunic. You start out with the tunic. I guess it's kind of like a tannish green, and then when you pick up the blue ring, you actually turn blue, and things do half as much as damage, which is super nice. Because by the time I'm in Dungeon 5, some things are doing 2 points of damage to me, so that means that I can kind of face tank things a little bit more, and that's kind of what I do. I never felt I was getting better at this game. I always just felt that I was just throwing more and more resources at it.
Yeah, that's one of the items
though. You can. Yeah, it works. One of the resources you can use with enough money, you can basically get a health potion that restores all your health. And so I basically use that. Go deep into the dungeon and be like, all right, I'm far enough. Let's go ahead and burn that heal. And continue exploring.
And it has two uses on it too, which is super nice.
The red one.
The red potion. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep, and then the red turns into a blue, and then the blue has one, and then it goes back to, like the letter which an old man gave you earlier. He says, "Show this to the old woman," right?
Ah, yes.
And you go, and then this old woman won't talk to you unless you show her this note, and then once you show her a note, then she'll sell some potions for you.
Oh, Link had to get his prescription.
That's right.
I did find Dungeon 9 by accident here, so I kind of noped out of that one. It's also worth noting that all of the dungeons have the same music except for dungeon number 9, which has a more nefarious music. So when you get in there. Yes, yeah, like, oh, this is trouble.
Yeah.
Once you get out, we finished Dungeon 5. You basically blow on the whistle, which I guess, this is being the first Zelda, actually is the basis of the series future musical instruments, right? Actually, I'm trying to remember if Zelda 2 has any musical instruments.
You use a flute at one point.
Okay. So we use here a flute, and it kind of acts, I guess it's a whistle, and it acts, it actually... what was it, Dig Dog or whatever his name was?
Yeah.
If you use that, he kind of loses his invulnerability and turns into a much smaller version of him. Pretty easy fight after that. You just got to stab him with the sword a couple times. And then when you get out into the overworld, you'll find if you blow on the whistle, it actually warps you around to all of the different dungeons you've found. Or actually, how does it warp you around to different dungeons, Alamaxia?
So it'll warp you to the dungeons you've completed. And you can control what direction it takes you. Like if you can think of going through the dungeons in some linear fashion, if you make Link look to the right and blow the whistle, it'll take you to the next dungeon. If you look to the left and blow the whistle, it'll take you to the previous dungeon. If you look up or down, take you to a random one.
Oh, interesting.
That makes me so upset. That would be so cool if I would have known that. There's a lot of depth here that I love about this game.
Yeah.
It's just the things you don't notice. Like that magical key that I never picked up. I'm pretty sure Lobos never picked it up
I did not pick up that magical key, no.
Yeah. We'll talk about that, but boy. So I found Dungeon 6. And this is basically where the difficulty throws you in a fire and stomps on you because you encounter Wizrobes.
Oh, Wizrobes.
And there's 2 variants of Wizrobes. Alamaxia, I don't want to experience... And I even tried to throw it on the meat. I was like, all right, maybe I'll throw it on the meat. The Wizrobes will... they don't care about the meat. Take the meat and leave me alone. Alamaxia, walk us through these Wizrobes because I'm going to start curling up into a ball here.
Wizrobes are such... They are probably the most difficult enemy to deal with in this entire game because there's 2 different styles of them. You have the orange and the blue Wizrobes. Orange and blue. Orange is the easier of them. They will just randomly disappear and reappear around the room and shoot out a magical whoop beam at you. They alone aren't too bad. The blue ones are the horrible ones, though. The blue ones will constantly move around the room. They're quite quick, and instead of disappearing and reappearing in another location, they'll kind of phase themselves across the room. And when they do that, they can hurt you with their phasing. It gets to be absolutely chaotic when you have 3 blue Wizzrobes moving around the room at once, and 3 orange Wizzrobes bouncing around, firing their whoops at you. There's no getting out of there without taking damage.
This is where I wish that I just had like a submachine gun so I could close my eyes, hold down the trigger, and spin around. And also, I don't know if you noticed this as well, Lobos, is the orange Wizzrobes, they'll disappear and reappear, but their hitbox actually is active even before they reappear. So you can be walking, and all of a sudden, boop, you get hit by running into one of the orange Wizzrobes even before.
Oh, wow.
It appears. So again, as a kid, I remember I'm like, I feel like I did a dungeon out of order, and sure enough, I was like, let's move on to Dungeon 7. We'll come back to Dungeon 6.
Well, I want to know. The one thing I was going to mention on the Wizzrobes is that in 1 or 2 very troublesome spots, I managed to find a couple spots where they will phase into like these blocks on the ground, and they will just kind of repeatedly path trying to phase over these blocks and trying to hit me.
Wow.
And so I use that to sort of cheese them and hit them while they're doing that, because they wouldn't reveal themselves and then start shooting at me unless they were, in line with me. So it was kind of inconsistent, but it worked well enough that it made things a lot easier.
Now,
I'm upset that you found a strategy.
There is one way to make Wizzrobes generally a little easier.
Oh.
And that's to have a magical shield, because it'll block their food.
Yes.
Ah, yeah, sure.
Which the likes will eat, and sometimes they'll throw the likes in the room with the Wizzrobes. Boy. All right, so let's talk about Dungeon 7. Again, I remembered the trick here, but I'm curious because there's, as far as I know, there is a clue. There is absolutely a clue for this. Lobos, did you find the clue on how to find Dungeon 7?
Wait, where was Dungeon 7 again? I don't remember.
You remember there? You have to blow the warp, the whistle in the area without the fairy.
Yes. They said something about, what did they say? Where the fairies don't live or something like that. And there's two ponds next to each other, kind of not directly next to each other on separate screens, but you go down and you go up the other side, and there's one with fairy, one without. And I figured that one out. Luckily,
you figured it out on your own. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I started.
Congratulations on that. So
those electric, they have electric variants of those bubbles in later Zeldas that are called anti-fairies. So that kind of put me on a weird track. I was like, anti-fairies, huh? But that's not in this game.
So we're in Dungeon 7 now, which is called the Demon, and here's the part that we were talking about earlier, where there's an individual, one of the orange moblins, and he is not hostile, and he just says, grumble, grumble. And when I went there, I was thinking this was like a disgruntled employee who was just like, rah, 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 rah. And so I was like, what the heck is going on here? And then I left the screen. I'm like, wait a minute. Oh, maybe that's his stomach.
Yeah.
Oh, I wonder if I can feed him food. Did you figure that out right away, Lobos?
As soon as I saw grumble, grumble, I said, okay, I got to go get the food. So then I farmed.
So you made the association with him being hungry right away.
Yeah.
Ah, that's cool. And I think this is a real tricky one, because for the most part, things are pretty clear about how you would progress. Like sometimes you won't have an item from a dungeon, and you'll go and find it. But this is one where if you miss that food, man, this would have been hard as heck to try to figure out how to get past, right?
Yeah, and do you know how many vendors there are that give you the meat, Alamaxia?
Oh, I thought there's just one.
I think it is just the one.
Is it just the one? And that one is...
And it's the secret, it's a secret one.
It's hidden underneath like a statue guy, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So if you don't find that, good luck. Yeah.
And this is, I think... it's frustrating. I think now for us to play games and not being able to progress. But man, this was a hallmark of games like this where you'd go into school and like Lisa would tell you, she's like, I know how to do it, but I'm not going to tell you unless you tell me something in Mario or something. And you'd trade secrets, right? Or it's like, oh man, did you hear that Mitch beat the game? And you're like, oh, and then they're the popular kid. And that's so cool. I love moments like that. And these are the things that you would talk about.
Or draw your own maps. That's the thing that I loved doing with these old Zelda games was the overworld, drawing my maps, marking where the hidden items were. And I still remember when I was like 6 years old going around the game and literally trying to burn every single tree in the game with a blue candle because I wasn't good enough to get to the red one.
We just got the red candle, which makes that easier. But yeah, the blue candle you can shoot out once, and then you have to leave the screen and come back. So when you've got a forest of like 50 trees, that takes a while. Red candle, now you can use and shoot as many times as you want. So now it's kind of become almost a weapon where it's usable and now a lot easier to find that stuff. And then we do complete that dungeon and we fight. What was that called? What was that boss called?
Alamaxia.
Aquamentus, which was basically something we already fought before, maybe a little more challenging.
I like to think of Dungeon 7 as being like this kind of difficulty reprieve where the enemies aren't difficult, but they really up the dungeon logic. Like you have to start thinking about bombing walls more, and there's a lot more going from secret stair to secret stair than the other ones had. So it's really preparing.
I really enjoyed Dungeon 7. Like after Dungeon 5, which was kind of hard, and Dungeon 6, which was, oh gosh, this hurts. Dungeon 7 was like, oh, that was relaxing. And it reminds me of how fun Dungeon 1 through 4 was, because it's not particularly hard. It's fun to go through and check out all the areas and find those secrets and find your items. So
in Dungeon 7 they give you some sort of clue like it's in the nose or something like that.
Yeah, there's a secret in the tip of the nose.
Secret in the tip of the nose. And at this point I realized that like the maps were shaped like things. So I was like, okay, right, go to the nose. And the room that is at the tip of the nose is this annoying room, again with these electric enemies, although less annoying now that I realize that they don't hurt you. But there's just this big kind of C shape of blocks, and you're like, all right, well, there's some secret here, and I tried bombing, so I guess I have to push every single block, and these electric things are just chasing you the whole time. I was like, But you managed to. It's the very middle one on the C, which is kind of the farthest away one and tougher to get to, but it just opens up a secret staircase to progress.
There are mobs in that room that we didn't really talk about earlier. I want to touch on. They're called Wall Masters, and they are only in a few areas of this game. They do make returns in the later Zeldas, but what they do is if you get touched by one of them, they grab you and pull you through the wall and take you right back to the beginning of the dungeon.
Huzzah.
Which can be
have fun.
Quite annoying.
Fun. It can be, especially because they are often placed at the very end of the dungeon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I wanted to go back to what you're talking about with some of those secrets. I as going through again, kind of understanding, game design more as you play video games a lot, you start to realize some of the patterns. And I think it's absolutely brilliant that you can almost tell when a secret is around because they telegraph it very well. For instance. So let's say you go into an area and it's a dead end and there's a bunch of enemies there. And when you kill the enemies, a bomb drops and you're like, why'd they give me this bomb?
Yeah.
And so you're like, I'm going to bomb all the walls. And more often than not, guess what? Secret. Or sometimes, again, you hit a dead end, bunch of enemies, and nothing will spawn, but there's a bunch of blocks around. And you're like, what if there's I push on one of the block?
Yeah.
I think that's so cool. And it's like, I think that type of stuff almost forms in my mind the basis of how you telegraph secrets in a way that players can pick up if they're savvy enough, right?
Right.
And it makes it so it's not just a guessing game, but you're like, oh yeah, I bet I bomb here, and yep, sure enough, that's how you progress in the dungeon. And it allows you to have those areas where you have to have like they do put areas where in order to progress you have to find the secret. There's no crit path. The crit path is find the secret. And I love that. And it's not often games do that anymore. And we didn't show this, but we did find in Dungeon 6 after completing it, I think you get the
magical
wand,
rod,
right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Magical rod, which will shoot. It'll shoot basically the same thing that the wizard's robes will shoot at you. And so I was like, great, finally I can use these to kill the dark nuts. Darn it, it doesn't work against them. So.
Nope.
And then in Dungeon 8, real early in Dungeon 8, you find a book, and what that does, that book adds a little bit of fire to your Wizrobe, your Wizrobe attack. Alamaxia, walk me through this one again. Set me up the scene here, because this...
So this is probably one of the most painful rooms in the entire game. What you have are, I believe it's 4 or 5 blue dark nuts that are all walking around this room, that have 4 statue heads in the corners that are all shooting fireballs at you, and effectively you just have to kill them and survive. There's 2 locked doors, 1 open door, and a bomb door that you came through. It's just chaos, trying to dodge all 4 of the fireballs at once while lining yourself up for the right attack on the dark nuts. You have to be in constant motion, because if you stop for even a split second, you're going to get hit. It's so difficult.
And so
I found the trick.
One of the things that that we hadn't mentioned yet that kind of makes this harder than any other like newer types of games like this is that you can't move diagonally. You can only move like up and then right, or right and then up. So you can't kind of come in at an enemy at a certain angle. You have to do this upright, in order to get this diagonal movement, and that makes it a lot harder to position yourself.
It's really tough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can't attack diagonally, but oddly enough, you can shoot your boomerang diagonally.
Yep.
I think that's the only thing you can do diagonally. Here's what I found: the trick to that room we were talking about with all the dark nuts. I found that if you kill an enemy and then you exit the room, and then you go back into the room doesn't entirely respawn. In fact, it actually keeps track of how many enemies you've killed. So what I would do is I would go down, I would kill everyone but 1 of the dark nuts, and then I would go die, and I'd go heal up to full, and then the dungeon would reset, and then I'd come back to that room, and there'd be only 1 dark nut spawned. Alamaxia, did you know about that?
I did not know about that one.
Yes, I got something up. Yeah, check it out. Check it out. Yeah, it seems like again, what happens when you die in the dungeon? It's like, hey, do you want to try again? And if you try again, the whole dungeon respawns. But again, it seems to remember or keep track how many monsters were spawned in the room.
Right.
So if you don't kill, now I will say, if you kill them all, it will then respawn. But if you only kill like 1 or 2, it keeps track of that. So again, I know that for a fact in Dungeon 8. That was the case, but your mileage may vary in other dungeons. All right, so I finally found the power bracelet. Did you? I don't think you found this.
No, I didn't. It was just under like one of the statues you kill.
Yeah,
yep, it's under an Armos.
But it's not very useful. It just allows you to move around the world quicker. Does this allow you to find any additional heart containers, Alamaxia?
Oh, I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to think.
Okay.
I don't think it does. I don't think it does.
Throughout the world, there's these large boulders that you can't move, but then you get the power bracelet, and when you move them, there'll be like a little secret passage that you go in there and it says choose a road, and you can choose like 1 of 3 roads, and each road will bring you to a different location. So you can kind of use it to fast travel around the overworld. So this item is not necessary, and in fact, it's not even that exciting. So moving on, let's talk about Dungeon 9. Who wants to chat about Dungeon 9? Because I had so much fun on this one. It's so cool.
Well, I'll mention something we haven't talked about just yet, is that they have the idea of like dark rooms, and they're dark until you use the candle, or I guess the upgraded magical rod, which spawns a little flame. And then from that point on, you can see in that room, which is a pretty cool thing. And you don't need to see to get through the room. So you can optionally just truck right on through if you know what you're doing.
So
and in some ways, like Zelda 2, a lot of people, they forego that light because they know exactly where the enemies are going to be in the dark areas. So yeah, it's cool.
In some of the rooms, you can even see silhouettes of some of the blocks around. So it's like, the candle is kind of it's dim in here. I don't need it. But some of the rooms are very blackened out, darked out to where you can only see Link and the mobs, and some of them are a bit more complex to to where if you don't use that candle, you might use your ladder and get stuck in the water.
Yeah. Yeah. As far as Dungeon 9, you're not allowed in here until you have all the pieces of the Triforce, right? There's the old man at the beginning, and I can't remember exactly.
No, I came in without it. I didn't progress, but
if you go into the second room of the 9th dungeon, the old man is there, and he doesn't let you through. I forget exactly what he says, because I went to Dungeon 9 before I went to 2, and I went in, and I was like, all right, let's go. But then you
I want to beat the game now. Thanks, old man.
Yeah.
It says one who does not have Triforce can't go in.
Oh, there you go.
I love Dungeon 9. This is probably one of my favorites because there's so many secrets in here, and you have to find the secrets to progress. And for some reason, it just reminds me of an old school Dungeons and Dragons thing where it's like, I'm just going to do my best guess here. And yeah, that just happens that if you're reading the signs and you're looking at your map, because the map, the game does do an auto map for you, even if you don't have the map itself, right? You can pull up the pause menu and you look at, here's all the rooms you've been.
Yeah.
And so you can start to make some intelligent guesses of like, well, it looks like there could be a room here. There's an empty spot here, which I haven't found yet. So I'm just going to try to bomb around it. And often it's like, great, there you go. There's the secret room.
Yeah, this was the one time in the playthrough where I opted to go and farm some keys, because you can buy keys from vendors, and I think they're just universal. You can use them in any dungeon. And you can also skip using keys in dungeons if you don't want, for example, the map or the compass if it's behind a key door, and then use them in later dungeons, which I think is really cool. And this dungeon, I feel like I missed so much. I think I got pretty lucky in navigating it, but I bought a couple of keys to get me through it, because, man, there was a lot of key doors.
I bought 3 keys, so yeah, I had to farm some gold there. But apparently, if I was better at finding things, there would have been a magic key, I think in Dungeon 8, right, Alamaxia?
Yep, in Dungeon 8, there was a blue dark nut room that you normally would have had to just go to the right of them, and you were fine, and that took you toward the boss. But if you were to have bombed the wall above them, that would have taken you to another manhandler, I believe. And off of one of the sides of him, you could bomb to find another one of those diamond rooms that has diamond blocks, the stairway in the middle. And that'll take you to the lion key, which will change your key number from a 0, 1, 2, or 3 to an A. So it overflows the variable so that you have infinite keys.
No, that's not a that's hexadecimal, my friend. That is hexadecimal. That is awesome. Not an overflow. I'm guessing that. Level 9 is, I think, composed of 4 different areas that you kind of take stairwells in between. Is that right, Alamaxia? Is it 4 like disjointed areas?
Oh gosh, it's 4 or 5. I'm looking at the map right now. It's 1, 2. It's you go through. I think about 4 or 5 different areas. Yeah. You're right.
Yeah. So what that means is basically there's no way to get there's no straight path from the start of the dungeon to the end of the dungeon. You have to kind of find these secret things, and then when you come up from the secret ladder, you'll be teleported into a different part of the dungeon. And I just found the last item we need to complete the game, which is the silver arrow, which looks suspiciously blue, but I think it's called silver arrow in the game. I didn't realize that I needed this item, and I was just lucky enough to find it. There's also another item.
We covered Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, and that is it's the same strategy here. So I knew I needed to find those silver arrows.
Yeah. So let's skip ahead to the boss fight real quick. I had no idea what was going on. I go in here, and you see Ganon, who's this big pig monster. And by the way, the room looks like a skull, which is pretty cool. So I go in there, and he just starts disappearing. I was like, what the heck am I supposed to do? So I just start stabbing all around. I was like, all right, well, it appears that every time I stab him, he's like visible for a period of time. So I think I'm doing the right thing. That's good. And so I think I read someone talked about a silver arrow being the key to killing Ganon or something like that. I don't remember where I saw that, but one of the NPCs says something about a silver arrow, so I was pretty sure I needed that. And after, I think it's 3 times that you make him visible, he I guess loses his power because he turns from blue to brown. And I was like, that's it. That's my cue. Shoot him with the silver arrow. And sure enough, it worked. Lobos, how did your battle go?
It's slightly different from the Link to the Past version, but so the one thing that I didn't immediately figure out was how to get him to appear, and so I kind of did the same thing as you. I spammed some bombs, I shot some magical rod, and eventually I just managed to attack where he appeared, because I think he just teleports around, but invisibly, and then you can just attack him, and then he'll appear. And then I knew to go ham on the silver arrows. One thing that it's funny, I just watching it again, it's so funny. You finish the Ganon fight, walk into the next room, and there's like these flames.
What's that all about?
Nowhere else in the game do you have to do this, but you just attack the flames and they disappear. And I imagine if you have like half a heart, you could walk into them and die, and then have to.
I almost wonder if that was the intent there, where you're so excited, you're like, I'm gonna plow through. Oh, and I die.
Yeah, I don't know.
So you get the Triforce all over your head, and you rescue the Princess Zelda, and it rolls the credits real quick, and then it just says, hey, congratulations, another adventure starts here. And sure enough, you start, and you pick up the sword, and it's the same basic mechanics, although a lot of the items and dungeons are shuffled around. And I think, Lobos, you made the mistake of naming your character Zelda.
The very first, when I was first starting, I was just like, all right, what do I name him? And then people were like, oh, Zelda. And I was like, oh, I get it. Like the meme that Link is Zelda and this and that. So I was like, cool, Zelda. I'll do that. And then people were like, and I was like, what?
I just saw chat like, he doesn't know, LOL. Like, oh, Lobos. Okay, now I'm gonna save you here, Lobos, because let's do it the right way. But yeah, you can basically skip to the second quest. Alamaxia, do you want to give us like a 1-minute synopsis on what the second quest is all about?
Yeah, so the second quest, objective is still the same. Find Ganon, defeat him, save Zelda, but a lot of the actual game mechanics have been changed up, or they've even added new ones. There are now walls that you can walk through in dungeons, so you have to push against the wall for a short time before Link will go through it.
Holy crap, that's cool.
Those skull bubbles that, Lobos, you were like, oh, they're actually not too bad. Well, now they hurt you and they shoot things at you.
Oh, great.
Stalfos, the skeletons, will shoot swords at you. Everything does a lot more damage. Dungeons are moved around. Secret spots are moved around. Really, it feels like an entire new game, just in the same engine. It's like really good.
It feels like if they really quickly released a Zelda 2, and it's like, okay, here you go. Zelda 2's out now, now go buy it. And it's like, oh, okay, it's the same game, but different, right? So,
or in a way, it feels like a randomizer to me, because I have played through a couple randomized Zeldas, Zelda 1 and Link to the Past, and it's always fun to me to play through a randomizer, because these are games that I love at the core. Just I can play through a Link to the Past almost every day for the rest of my life and still be happy. But playing through it as a randomizer, where every time I play through it, I still have that sense of discovery, that sense of, ooh, I really don't know where this item is, and I have to go and look around. So fun. So fun to recycle these old games.
I don't know. I'm not joking. When I finished level 8, I had a migraine from the dark nuts. I literally, I don't get headaches a lot, but I was like, because my head was hurting so much trying to concentrate on the pattern. So I don't know. Your idea of being happy is a lot different than mine, Alamaxia, but I'm glad you enjoy this game. And again, this is one of those that, I never actually completed. And this was always a monkey on my back as I got to Dungeon 9 and I never completed it. I'm so gracious that you guys, spent this time and we picked this game to play. And I finally checked something off my bucket list. Yeah. So let's go ahead and close this out. Lobos, closing thoughts from you on Zelda, as this is not new to the Zelda franchise, but certainly new to the original Zelda. So walk me through just a high level what your thoughts are on this.
Yeah, with a whole lot of games kind of paying homage to Zelda and its beginnings. Like there's a lot of stuff that going into it, I was able to understand. Like, oh yeah, because they did this in this game. That's from Zelda. Cool. Like even like the recorder item that you use it plays a little melody that they use in Super Mario Brothers 3, which is also where you get a whistle that warps you around the world. Yeah. And it's pretty cool. And so there's a lot of little references that I was like, nice. Definitely, retro difficulty. which is, it wasn't too punishing, but it's definitely tough. Like, if you die, you start at the beginning of the dungeon, and that's not too bad. Sometimes you had to go farm and get a health potion. But overall, it was what I expected in terms of difficulty and everything. I think it's fantastic for when it came out, for all the exploration that's in it, and for what it spawned, really.
I love the little riddles. It's just, that sense of exploration and discovery and trying to decipher stuff. I was like, yeah, this is great.
Yeah.
So, and I think we made the decision we're going to try to cover a Zelda game every holiday. And so I think there's some cool ones we'll get to do in the future.
Nice.
So, but that's going to close out this episode. We wanted to thank all of our Patreon supporters for helping make this episode possible. We actually got 2 new supporters, so thank you so much. We got one from Saxy Jax, and we got another one from Jay. So thank you so much for helping support the show, folks. Really appreciate it. And this was episode 25, so I feel like this is kind of a cool little milestone, right? This is great.
Yeah, it's a quarter of a century of podcasts.
Yeah, pretty much back to back. Line them up. If you line them up, it goes further than the moon.
Wow, that's impressive.
True fact.
It's a lot of bytes you put there. So, yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. I'm super excited about our next game here because it's set in New York, right? And let's see. Let's get all. If we could all give our best, like, scornful, scowling look right now, just like as angry as you can be. Okay, so that's basically the face of the next protagonist, the entire game. Oh, it's so great. We're going to be checking out Max Payne. Oh, man. I'm so excited about this because I remember just diving all around in slow motion, shooting shotguns. So that's going to be a great one. And he's got this angry look. I don't know what the deal is. This dude is always angry looking. So
well, he's always diving in slow motion.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, and hurting up his elbows. So he's very, very unhappy about that. So super excited, and we're gonna be checking that out in January in the new year. So
heck yeah,
look out for that. Also, look out for our Game of the Year deliberations, which should be arriving in podcast form near the end of December here. Those will not be published on YouTube, so if you want to check out what we deem as the best games, best graphics, best music of 2000, please listen to the podcast. It's so much fun. I love chatting with you folks about that, and I think you'll have fun listening to that.
Yeah, it was awesome, especially with some special guest speakers. Like, we had a lot of different views and opinions on these things, so it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, sadly, we have reached the end credits of this episode, and we wanted to thank everyone for listening to us on the podcast or watching us on YouTube. And you can find us on YouTube on LobosJr's YouTube.
Or you can find us on Twitter at SaturnMGaming.
And of course, we do release a new podcast monthly, so you can, go to iTunes or Google, whatever you use to follow and subscribe there. Also, one thing I wanted to throw out there, I actually purchased us SaturdayMorningGamingShow.com. That's a cool little thing, right, for episode 25. I was like, let's make this professional. So we all quit our jobs.
Yeah.
This is our main gig now. Woo!
Yes,
we're making it big. We got a .com.
Made it big. Heck yeah.
That's gonna be. We're not gonna use it to update too often. It'll probably just be a home for people to view current episodes and stuff like that. But it's kind of under construction. There's not a whole lot there, but we could use that to basically always have, like, hey, you want to get our Discord, our Twitter, our episodes, our YouTube, all will be linked there. So you don't have to remember all this stuff. You just go like SaturdayMorningGamingShow.com. And I spent $10,000 buying out that domain.
Oh my goodness! So
Patreon
people, you know
what to do.
Not that much. Just kidding. So if you have any feedback for us, we'd love to hear from you. Shoot us an email at SaturdayMorningGamingShow@gmail.com.
Yeah, and if one of your pieces of feedback is you'd like to buy a domain called SaturdayMorningGamingShow.com, I do have it for sale for $50,000. So
wait a minute.
Wait. All right. And again, we wanted to give a special shout out to TechnoAxe for much of the music on this episode.
For Saturday Morning Gaming, I'm Alamaxia.
And I'm Lobos.
And I'm the Fat Wizard. We want to wish you all to have a happy holiday. Please stay safe out there, and we will see you in the new year with Max Payne on the PC.